Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the use case building series with UiPath, and today we are going to build a project which is called the identity card generation. Now this identity card generation can be used in education vertical for generating of the ID cards. It can be used in an enterprise for creating the ID cards of the new joiner, and the same process can be also used to generate the gate passes, right? So it's a kind of a mix and match project. You can modify the use case accordingly and you can create your own use case. In case you are coming to the channel for the first time, please do subscribe to the channel to get the upcoming videos on RPA UiPath. This is the second video in the ID card use case. In the first video, we have seen a quick sneak peek that how exactly the robot behaves and what are we going to build. We have seen what is the as is versus to be process, meaning how exactly the manual process is happening and how exactly the robot will do the process. If you want to do this automation by yourself, you would require a certain set of files and folders. So which files are needed? What is the folder structure? All of that has been described in detail in the first part. I have put the link of the first part in the description for your reference. Coding wise, we have divided the solution into two parts. In the first part, we have look at the problem statement. We have converted the ReFramework to work with Datatable. We have read the data and we have created the transaction with the help of Datatable. Here we are not using Orchestrator queues. In case you are looking for a solution of ReFramework to work with Orchestrator queues, I have a different solution completely built with ReFramework and the queues, which is an end-to-end use case for HR offer letter generation. I have put the links in the description so you can refer that. In the part 1, we also have completed the init, get transaction and the process state. This is the part 2 where we would be covering the identity cards in PDF and editable formats. We'll update the status back to the Excel. Why Excel? Because I am not using orchestrator queues. So to backtrack, I would require something, right? So that something is nothing but an Excel, which is the input file. Also, we are going to send the ID cards via an email, and in this one we would be actually covering and completing the process.xaml of UiPath. So let's get started. If I go to the main, here the single transaction would be processed one by one. So in my Excel, I have got 16 items. All the 16 items. Now what I have to do with those 16 items? Do I need to create an ID card, or I need to put them into some system, or I need to extract some of the report and do some calculation? Whatever which is getting and has to be repeated for each and every transaction, that code will come in process transaction. If you open process.xaml, just now we have seen that we have updated the set transaction status, this guy, right? If you click on open workflow, you will notice that after successful business exception, system exception, one thing is common, that is increment the transaction number, right? Now you might be noticing that in case of system exception, we have not incremented the transaction number. That is because system exception has a retry mechanism. Now what is that retry mechanism? For example, if you are writing any automation and because your Internet Explorer was not responding, it got a system exception. Now chances are there that if I retry that thing, or if I retry the item, it might get successful. So that is where a retry would come in picture. Now for every retry, if I am using orchestrator queue, the queue has a retry which is called queue retry. Now when I am using a ReFramework, which is a customized ReFramework with Datatable, now to retry the system exception, I would need to go to the config, and let me just open this one. In the config, now I will specify how many times I want to retry the system exception, and that value is available in the constant. So in the constant, if you see, there is an item which is called max retry number. The default value of the max retry number is 0. So what does it say? It must be 0 if I am using orchestrator queues. Okay, in our case we are not using orchestrator queue. If it is greater than 0, it would mean that if any transaction is failing with system exception, it will retry. So let's say for every system exception, in case there is a system exception in any transaction, I want it to retry only once. You are free to increase this number to 2, 3, right? Which means that in case of any system exception, it will come and it will retry. Set transaction status, right? In case of a system exception, the loop will come here. If I double click this one, and you will see, first of all, in case of system exception, what will happen? It will take the screenshot of the screen, that if the IE is frozen, if the Excel is not responding, and it will store the screenshots. Now the question is where exactly it is going to store, right? So you can click on import arguments, and you could see that it is storing the screenshot in the X screenshot folder path. If I go here, you would see that X screenshot folder path is there in the constant. So exception underscore screenshot is a folder which is by default created in ReFramework project here, which is this guy. So all kind of exception screenshot would be available here. Now, in case you do not want to store the exception screenshot here, you can always path a full relative path, right? Such as d colon data backslash screenshots. As of now, keeping this to the default settings. Now, I have got a system exception. It has taken the screenshot. Now, if there is a queue retry, so how does we know that if there is a queue retry or not? It will go to the transaction item and it will check if it is a queue item or not, right? So this is the logic which says that if the transaction dot get type is a queue item, so we are checking is it a queue item? So the answer would be no. So it won't go into this loop, right? It won't go into this if condition, and we already have commented, right, this one, the set transaction status. So it won't go into this loop because we are not using a q1. So if you say that if the transaction item is a queue item, then it goes here. Now what happens if it is not a queue item? Then this retry current transaction dot xaml would come in picture. So this is a common xaml. If you notice, this is applicable in both the scenarios. Either if you are using with queue or you are not using queue, this XAML will automatically get executed. So let me quickly show you what exactly happens in this XAML. It's a straightforward XAML which just check if the max retry number is greater than 0, if the max retry number has been reached, and if you notice, it is reading the number from the config. Max retry number, right, which is nothing but the same number which we just set to 1. So that means if the number is reached, condition yes, it will just increment the retry number, and if case the number is not reached, it will not increment. So how does it work? How many times I have to retry? So here I am telling that you have to retry only once, right? So it will check whether the retry number has been reached or not. If the retry number is not reached, it will not increment. But if the retry number has already been reached, right, so you have already retried the number of times you have specified in config, in that case it will ask ReFramework and it will ask UiPath to go and increment the transaction number that go to the next transaction, right? So that is what happens in the set transaction status here, right? So in both the success business exception, it goes and increment the index. In case of system exception, it is retried and incremented inside this block. So other thing which you need to change here is this one, in case you want to retry, but this works only for the system exceptions. Okay, all the exceptions which are categorized as system exception would be incremented by their counter. Fine, so we are good here. Now if we come here again, so I have got 16 transaction here. I am getting all the transaction one by one. I am processing the transaction here. When I am processing the transaction, there are three things which would happen. The first thing is the transaction is successful. Transaction is successful. What would happen? It will go to the set transaction, and as we have just seen, it will increment the transaction and get me the next one. In case of business exception, again the business exception, it will again go, it is not going to retry, and it is going to get the next transaction from the get transaction data. The third is the system exception. Now in case of system exception, it is instructed to go again to the initialization state and retry. Now how many times it would retry? It would retry the number of times you have specified in the config, right? So now what would happen? Every transaction, it will come back here and in the initialization. Now why it is coming to initialization? Because it is a system exception, and chances are there, if there is any system exception and I just retry, okay, so let's say IE was not responding, Edge was not responding, there was an issue with the Excel application, right? So chances are there, if I kill and if I stop close everything, it might work. So that is why it is coming again to initialization. But in the initialization we also have code to read the data again, right? So I do not want to read the data, I just want to retry the existing transaction. So to stop it from reading the content again, that is why we have put our code in this one, which is called in first run read the local configuration file. So if I keep this code, this one, read input data from Excel workflow outside of the first run. So if I keep it somewhere here outside, as of now this is here, so that why it is not going to execute this block. But if I keep it outside, what would happen? In case of the system exceptions, it will go and again read the data. So you already have 16, it will read again the 16 data. That is why reading should be done in the first run. Now here in case of system exception, it will come and it will reinitialize all the application. But you might be thinking that Mukesh, how it will reinitialize, because it has never killed or it has never closed everyone, right? It has never closed any of the application, it is just coming and trying to reinitialize, right? Your question is valid. Where exactly it is trying to kill and clean up the environment? That happens now in the set transaction. If you go to the set transaction status, which is this one, in case of system exception, just we have seen that it was q retry, not doing anything, then increment the transaction number 1, which is the retry current transaction, and then if you would see, there is one block which says try closing the application, right? So this is the block which take care of closing. In case there is an exception in closing, then it will go and use the kill process, kill all process, right? So in case of system exception, before trying anything, ReFramework make sure that we close or kill the application, and this is checked in the set transaction status. So what happens after this comes here, already my environment is clean, and now it just go and retries the same transaction by initializing everything again, right? So that is the purpose of set transaction status, and that is how the retry works. Okay, so now I hope you understand how does a system, business exception and the system exception flow would work, right? You would notice the business exception is only coming from the process transaction. Now why it is so? Because this is the place where I am going to write the actual business logic. So when I am writing the business logic, then only I would have business exception, right? So what could be the business exception here? So if I ask you, for example, this one, right? Employee number 7. This do not have a date of joining. So what should I specify in the ID card? So I would need to raise a business exception. For these two employees, there is no employee code, right? So how would I generate ID card? For this guy, there is no date of joining, right? So all of these scenarios will be taken as a business exception. Fine. Okay, so now coming to the process transaction. Now I hope you understand what we need to do in the process transaction. So all the code, all the transactions are getting retrieved one by one and getting passed to the process transaction as the transaction item one by one here, right? And just now I have seen that I was successfully able to print those as well. I'll just open the process.xaml again. We can close the extra xamls. Now it says started the process, and we have seen that I was successfully able to print all the name as well, right? So that means if I am able to retrieve this complete row, this name, that means I am able to retrieve all of these things also, right? So now all I have to do is create the identity cards, right? So let's try to create the identity card. I'll just go and delete this one. I'll save this. Now to create the identity cards, as we have seen, I have kept this id form dot docs here. Okay, so this is the id form which we want to create the identity card and then send it over an email as well, right? So let's say this is an identity card format. We just want to replace name, department, all of this thing, and the photograph placed which is in this folder, right? So how do we do that? So first of all, this template is in a Word, right? So I would need to read this Word file. So now to read the Word file, how do I read? In case you don't already know, there is a dedicated video on reading the Word files, right? So as of now, I do not get the Word activities. That is because in my project, in the dependencies, I do not have the word automation activities available. Just go here, right click, click on manage, and in the all packages just type here word. Okay, so you would see something which is called UiPath.word activities. You have to click on install and save. Now I am telling UiPath that, see UiPath, I am trying to do some word automation. Why don't you give me some of the dependencies or some of the activities? So UiPath is going and it is installing the word dependency for me. There is a dedicated playlist on word automation on the channel in case you are new to word automation. I have put the links in the description so you can refer that as well. Okay, so now you can see in the dependency I have the UiPath.word activities added here. So now if I go to the activities and I type here word, I should see that yes, there is something which is called word application scope. Drag and drop the word application scope here because we want to do the word automation. Okay, fine. So again, best practice, go here and word application scope for ID card. The what is the next thing? It is asking me for the document path, right? So one way is I just go here and pass the document path like this in the d colon data word file. Sorry, my bad. In the project we are in the ID card and ID form open, right? But we don't want to hard code. We already have the config file with us. So what I do, I just go back to the project. In the data you would have something which is called config file, because as of now this ID card form is available here, right? Maybe in future it might change its location. So all such kind of things would be a part of the config file. So all you need to do is just copy this and go to the config, paste it here and just type the name. So I am just passing here template path for ID card, right? So this I just write here doc path for ID template sample, right? So this is just a sample which we are referring. Now in my UiPath I'm going to only use this one, template path ID, okay, or let's say just call it template path. Save this, go here, copy this one, come back to UiPath, and in here we are now going to refer it from the config. So from the config use this key, that's it. Now you might be thinking, how does the config object reached here, right? So if you'll see in the arguments, ReFramework has already done this coding for me, so it is already passing the config object to each and every XAML. Now all I have to do is just configure these things, right? So the first thing is I am using a word application scope and I am reading the word file here, right? Now I can get rid of this one. Now what do we want to do? So we want to replace the text name, department, DOG group with this one. But before that, if you would see, I need to validate, right? If the employee code is null or if any of the value is null, I want to raise a business exception, right? So for that, let us first take a assign activity maybe first. So that way you guys would understand that what we are trying to do. I'll hit Control plus K and create a variable called str underscore name. I think that is the first thing we require, right? Yes, name, department, 1 2 3 4 5 fields we require. So first of all we are going to create a variable called str underscore name. Now where is this name coming from? So this name I need to take it from the data row, and where is the data row? That is in transaction item. Okay, so from the transaction item what value you require? So it is asking me column name as string. So what is my column name? My column name is this one, right? Name. I just go here and type name dot to string. That's it, right? So I have got the name here. Now I need to check if the name is blank or not, right? If the name is blank, that means I need to raise a business exception and I need to inform the user that the name is blank. So I will use an if condition here, okay? And in here I would write that string, because this I have converted it to string dot is null or empty. Okay, so what does it mean? I am checking whether the name is null or empty or it's a white space. right? So somebody might just put a space in the name, right? That also won't work. So I am just putting a check here. If it is a null or empty, or is it null or white space, then you need to raise a business exception. Okay, so then what you need to do is you need to raise a business exception. So how do we raise a business exception? We use an activity which is called throw. So in the throw, in the properties, I would just say here new business rule exception, and I say that name cannot be blank. Okay, which means that in future if any of the name is coming as blank, I will get this business exception and I would know. Right now I have an option. You can always add more details, such as what is the transaction number, what is the employee ID, or any of the details, whatever you feel, right? So all of the details you have in this in transaction item. So whatever detail you feel, you can just feel free to add it, right? So as of now I'm just keeping that name cannot be blank and hit OK. But in case name is not blank, now what do I want to do? So here I am just getting the value in the str name. So I am checking if str name value is there, I need to throw the exception. But in case the it is working perfect, then we need to continue, right? So it will just go and continue from here. Now in case I have got the valid name, I just want to have a log message, or I can just keep it blank also, right? So hide else, that's it. So in case it is blank, I just simply want to throw a business exception, right? So now this thing I want to do it for all of the fields 1 2 3 4 5, right? If you notice that I am creating a lot of code here, right? So it is better if I create a separate XAML and let's invoke it, right? So one good practice whenever you are writing a piece of code, right, always work on the reusability and always make sure that your code is readable. Now if I keep putting this code here again and again, it will create a big workflow, right? So rather I will just select both of them, right click on it, and let me first go to the design and create a new sequence, and I will call this sequence as validate input data, right? I'll hit create. Now I have created a new sequence which is called validate input data. Now I will just go and cut both of them and paste it in the validate input data. Now in the validate input data, what I want to do, I want to write a separate XAML where I do all of this processing. But again, this is giving me error, right? It is saying that I don't understand where is this in transaction coming from and all those things, right? So because we have not passed the argument. So what we are going to do in our new XAML, whatever it is, we are just trying to create the argument. A easy way is just go to the process in the argument, select both of them, do a control C, come to the valid input data and click on the arguments like this and do a control V. Now UiPath will copy paste the for you, right? Now the same thing I can exactly do here as well. For this one, control C, I can quickly create a variable. Okay, so that's it, right? So now the validate input data is something which I want to validate here. So in the process.xaml, before I use the word application scope, I need to validate here, right? So I go to project and I just drag and drop the validate input data here. That's it. Now in the import argument, it is asking me for the data row. So yes, where I have the data row, that is the transaction item, and in the config goes the config. That's it, right? So why I have done is because I don't want to mess up a lot of code, right? So it's difficult to debug. So now I have all the things available here in this one, whose job is just to validate. Now I can freely write the same logic for all the others, right? So first one was for name, the next one is for the department. So I'll just go and copy this department, go back here, I will create a new variable which is for the department. In transaction item, get the department and store the value in a new variable which is called str underscore department, right? And now I am checking if the, instead of name, I would check if the department is null or the department is blank, you need to throw a business exception and the business exception should be department cannot be blank, right? So I go here and I say department cannot be blank and hit OK. That's it, right? So the same thing, so this assign is for the department. So that is why naming convention is important, because if I don't rename it, how would I know that which is for what? So name is done, department is done. Let me just quickly go and do a copy, do a paste, and after the department we are going to do for the employee code. The same thing here, control plus K, str underscore employee code, right? So I will do it quickly now. I hope you guys understand what I am trying to do here. So I am validating each and every input, right? So instead of the department, now this would be employee code. So now in here, in the if condition, we would be checking the employee code, we would be checking the employee code. In the through, in the properties, here we would say that employee code cannot be blank. Hit OK, save this, go back here. So I'll just again copy both of them, paste it here. Now I just want to do it for the date of joining. Okay, so you guys can do it for the next other field as well, right? So in the assign date of joining, here from the transaction item data row, get the value of date of joining, store this value in a variable called str underscore date of joining, doj. So I'm using control plus K, right? And it is already creating variables for me. Now in the if condition, we just need to validate here str underscore doj, right? So date of joining should not be blank or null. And in here in the throw, I just need to specify that the in the employee code it should be date of joining cannot be blank. Save this automation. That's it. In the validate workflow, we are now validating all of them, and in case of any exception it will throw a business exception. Fine. So first the process started, I am getting all those data, and all those data is getting stored in these variables, right? Which are these variables? This variable. But now you would notice that I need these values here, but these are part of here. So that means I need to pass this value out of this XAML to this one, right? So that means I would need to create arguments, right? So easy way again, guys, you just select all of them, right click on it and convert to arguments. Now by default it will convert them to in argument, but we want it as out argument, right? So I'm just going here and changing their direction to out. Save this, go back here to the process. Now you would notice that this XAML is giving me all these values, right? Str name, I will create a variable quickly, str underscore department. I'll create a variable here, str underscore employee code. Okay, and for the date of joining also str underscore doj, right? Okay, so again I have not read the blood group, so let's quickly do that. I'll go here in the open workflow, we need to do it, right? I cannot skip because we need that as an output. So I'll just copy this both of them again, paste it here, and this one I would say that this is for the blood group, I would say bg. So control plus K, str underscore blood group, and from the transaction item I need to have this value, right? So this you cannot write bg because this is what the data table has. Go back to the automation, in the properties here instead of dog write blood group. Okay, now I need to check here for the str underscore bg. So we'll just go here and write str underscore bg, and in here also we'll specify str underscore bg, right? So now in the throw, what we are going to say, we are going to say that the blood group cannot be null. So instead of this one I just say blood group cannot be null. Okay, now this is done, and again the strbg should also be an argument. So right click, convert to argument, and the direction should be out because we need to pass this value out of the XAML. Save this, close this. In here we go here and control plus K str underscore blood group like this. Okay, so now I have got all these values in these variables, right? So when the ReFramework is working, it will get me this record. All of these value are getting stored in all of these variable. If any of the value is blank, it will going to throw a business exception, and that's good, right? So now what is the next thing? The next thing is I want to go and create the identity cards here. Now to create the identity card, I have this template. To use this template, I have an activity. So what do I need to do? I need to put the name here, underscore name department. So I need to replace it, right? So how do I replace? So if you go to the activities and just search for replace. So I have in the Word documentation, there is replace text in the document, right? So this one, I would say that this is replace of name. That's it. Now what do I need to search for? I need to search for underscore name, right? So I am telling UiPath that you need to search for underscore name and replace it with str underscore name. That's it. Now what would happen when the robot will run? It will go and print the first name here. So the same thing we need to do it for the other one. I'll quickly copy, paste it. Now what is the next thing? Replace the department. So go here and name it to replace department. This should match the existing document, right? Otherwise it won't work because it is just a copy and replace, right? So underscore department should be now replaced with the variable. What is our variable? Our variable is str underscore department, right? So now again copy, again paste it. Now the next thing is after the department we have the date of joining and the blood group, right? So I'll go back here quickly. Here I would say this is the date of joining, and the date of joining is underscore doj. So I will write here underscore date of joining, and what do I want to replace it with? str underscore date of joining, right? That is why variable naming convention is important. That helps you to write the automation. If I have just use a b c d, then it would have been difficult for you, right? So that's why always create the variable name properly, right? Okay, so the next thing is blood group. Now I want to replace the underscore blood group. So this one is for blood group. I would write BG here, and we need to replace it with str underscore blood group, right? So 1 2 3 4 is done. How many we have? 1 2 3 4. We have last one, which is called in the emergency. What do you want to specify? So maybe in the emergency we want to specify the company's contact number, right? So the company contact number today is 1234. In future it might change, right? So let's go here, and in the settings I would quickly create an emergency number. I would tell the emergency number is, let's say, 908070605040. Okay, so let's keep it like this only. Okay, so let's say as of now this is the uh, emergency number which we want to have it in all the employees ID card, right? So again in the same thing I'll just again copy paste it. Now this one we are telling UiPath that you need to replace the emergency number. Now the emergency number would be replaced in which field? Underscore emergency. So I go here, type here underscore emergency, and in here I do not have a variable, right? But I need to get it from the config. So from the config, get the value of this key. What is this key? This key is emergency underscore num. So don't pass this, right? This is the key. Copy it, come back to UiPath Studio and pass it here. So that is what I am doing here. So I am telling UiPath to replace the emergency number in all the ID cards with this number. Fine. So this is just to show that how you can keep a value from the config, right, for all the transaction. So this is done. So UiPath has replaced this and this. Now what is the next thing? The next thing is we want to replace this photo with a the picture which is available in the images folder, right? Because in the images we would have the employee folders, right? So first of all, we want to see if the image is available in the folder or not, right? So before coming to the word application, okay, go here. Before coming to the word application, which is here where we are doing all those things, we have validated the data, right? But we have not validated whether the picture is available or not, okay? And we have not got the picture path also. So let me quickly go and create a small sequence here. Again, you can create a workflow also. I will call this as get the picture, right? We need to get the picture, right, of the employee. Get the picture. Now the picture is located in a folder. Now how do I check this, right? So picture, as you would have noticed, the employee code is something which is associating with the picture in the folder. Okay, so let's do it like this. First of all, how would ReFramework know where is the images, right? So we copy this path, take it to the config because we don't want to hard code anything. In here I would say that image folder path, and this is the path where all the images would be located. So I just call this as image folder path. I'll save this, and here image folder path, I have not mentioned the description, so emergency contact for all employees. Okay, so this is the image folder path where we have kept all the images. So this is in image folder path. Now I want to validate whether this .jpeg is available or not. So how do I validate whether that file is available or not, and if available, get me that path. Okay, so what I'll do is I will use an assign activity. Okay, now if you notice, this code is getting written for each and every row. So first time I will have this row, this row. For the second time I will have this row, like this, right? So first time for this row I will take this employee code and check in the folder if it is available or not, right? So how do I do? In the assign activity, in here in the value I would write directory dot get files. Okay, directory dot get files, and give me the path. Okay, so what is the path? The path is coming from the config. So config where is the object? The object of the config is image folder path. Copy this, go back to UiPath Studio, paste it here, dot toString. So it is telling get the files from the folder, this folder, but which file? So need to put a comma here. What do you want to search, right? I want to search for the employee code, right? I want to search for the employee code, which is this one, 50886. Now where is this employee code? If you notice, from the validate input data, employee code is coming in the variable which is called str underscore employee code. So in here I can use that. After putting a comma here, I am searching for employee underscore code. Okay, I'm not getting the employee underscore code here. Why? Let us quickly see. Str underscore emp code is the variable name, right? So, and the scope of the variable is in the process, so str underscore employee code. Okay, so in here, after put a comma and write str underscore employee code. Okay, so I want to search for str underscore employee code, and after that I want to look for dot jpg, right? So jpg. Now if I have to make you understand this thing, so what I am telling you, UiPath, that you go to this folder, okay, image folder, which is again coming from config, which is this guy. you look for an image, the name of the image would be stremployee_code.jpg. Now stremployee_code.jpg, how would I get the employee code? We have already got the employee code from the data row and stored it in that variable, right? So that's why we are telling UiPath you get this one. Now it might happen that there are one, right? There can be duplicate value. So I just want to say that dot first dot default, hit OK, and I want to store this value in a variable called str underscore image. Okay, hit OK. That's it. So in the image now I am getting this thing, but whenever you are writing any automation, right, you cannot actually guess the thing. So a good way which I usually follow is that I always create a temp sequence. So this is a temporary sequence which I have created, right? In the temporary sequence I just put the code which I want to test. So I want to test this code because I am not sure that what exactly this will give me, right? So I can quickly test this code by putting the hard-coded value here. So how do I do? So I will again create this variable. In here we just need to be careful in removing the variables from here, so like this. Okay, so the first thing is it is going to replace the image folder path. So image folder path is nothing but this one, so I'll just provide it hard-coded value to this guy like this. Okay, now employee code is again hard coded, so I will just provide the employee code from here, which is 50886. So I go here and type 50886 and hit, I can get rid of the extra spaces now. Okay, and hit OK. Fine, so let's try to only run this sequence and see what we are getting in the variable, right? Because I do not want to run the entire automation, so I just want to check what value I am getting in str image. So I can run it in debug mode also, put a debug breakpoint here and debug the file. Okay, so now in the locals, if I go here in the str image, I am getting the d:\id card complete image path, right? So that means this is the image path which I need, right? I can again validate by using step into, and yes, pretty good, it's working, right? Now let us try to do one more test. What happens if the employee code I pass and it is not having any image, right? So let me just go change it to some random number. Let me save this, go here and debug the file again, because we need to handle that exception also, right? What happens if the image is not there? So I want to check what value I'm getting. So if you will see, str image is coming as null, put, and it is coming as blank, right? So that means we need to handle this thing. So if the record is valid, I will get the path. If the record is not valid, I will get a null. Fine, so this thing works for me. So in the get picture, I am getting the complete path of the image in str underscore image, right? So let's do it like this, str underscore image path. That would make more sense, right? Now again the same thing, we will just validate if the image's path is available or not, if the file is available or not, right? So we have seen that it is coming as null, so I'm just writing the same condition, string dot is null or empty str image path, or string dot is null or white space, and I am also passing here str underscore image path. If any of this condition is getting passed, so you need to throw a business exception. And when I throw a business exception, what happens? It will go to the next transaction. Now in the business exception, how do I write? You just have to write new business rule exception, and you have to just specify here that image is not available in the folder. Okay, fine. So we have get the picture, we have validated, and this is for throw of the picture. Okay, so we have got the picture also here now. Okay, so now in the word application scope, I'll come back here and we have replaced everything. Now to replace the image, we would require the image path. The image path we have validated and it's available in the str image path, right? Now to replace the text, I have an activity called replace text. Let us see if I have something for the picture also, right? So I go here and I say replace. So yes, I have an activity which is called replace picture. Drag and drop it here. Now the replace picture is asking me for the alt text, right? So replace it with the picture. What is the complete path of the picture? Complete path of the picture is str underscore. Okay, I am not getting it here. Let me quickly check why. Because the get picture, okay, so it is in str image path and the str image path scope is only till this one. So I'll increase the scope to process and save this. Now let me come down and in here I can find the str underscore image path. Now how would UiPath replace this here, right? So there is, for every picture you would have something which is called alternative text, right? So this is the image. If I double click on the image, right, so every image has something which is called alternative text, as you can see at the top, this one. So as of now the alternative text is photo for this one, right? So you can have any image and this is written here photo. So I need to copy this one, okay, and let me verify, yes, the alternative text is photo. So go here, in here type photo. So I'm telling UiPath that you replace this photo with whatever image you find from the folder. Okay, once this is done, so let's say UiPath has provided and updated this template. Now what is the next thing? The next thing is we want to save as, because if I do a control plus S, if I do a save, what would happen? It will save this thing, right? I do not want to save this, I want to save as, right? So we have an activity again in UiPath which is called save as. Once this is done, I want to save the document as, and I want to save the document as PDF as well. So I want to save the document as again, because in future, let's say the admin or the senior guy wants to change the value, so they should have the word copy also available and they should have the PDF also available, right? So that is my thought, and I am doing a save copy as. It is asking me where do you want to save, and I want to save it in this location. So where do you want to save the ID cards, right? So let us say that we want to create a new folder here. I will create a new folder and I say that final ID cards. Okay, so the final ID cards is the folder. Again, the same concept. We are not going to hard code anything. Copy this, take it back to the config, specify here and say folder for ID cards, or I would just say folder for cards. So just type here final folder for ID cards, control plus S. This is the path where I want to create the files, right? So all I do here is path dot combine. Okay, what is this? I'm typing here path dot combine. You combine the path of whatever you get from the config, right, with what? The employee code. So let's try to create this with the employee code. Employee code dot docs, right? Because that's it, right? So if I just go here and click on the properties, let me quickly verify. In this folder, you just specify dot this and dot docs, right? So this will do a save as the document, right? So that would be a Word file available there. Now the same thing can be done, save as PDF, right? So from the PDF, again the same thing, PDF file path. So all I have to do is copy the same thing again here, do it here, and instead of dot docs, now I'm writing a dot PDF. That's it, right? So let's do a control plus S, and yes, once that is done, it would be created here. So I will put a log message, and in here let me say an info label log, and I say card created for, and I will write the employee ID, right, because I want to know which employee ID is getting processed. Dot to string. Okay, it's already string, fine. So card created for this one. So now we have to mail this also, but let us first validate till this step if we are able to do it or not, right? So I'll go here, save this template again, close this guy, go here, close this configuration as well. Do we want to save the config? Yes, I do want to save. And for this one I have 16 again available. Save this again. I'll put a breakpoint here, right? Let us see if it is working or not. So in the main, I'll go to the breakpoint panel and I can see that how many breakpoints I have. So one I have in the right line and one is in this one, right? So I only have one breakpoint. I can close this one also. I can close this one also. Let's go here and try to run this in a debug mode first. Okay, so let's see what happens. Okay, so ideally expectation is now we should get the first ID card created because I have put a debugger there. Okay, so initialization of the setting is done. We'll just move it to a little bit like this so that we can see. Okay, so killing of processing, Excel read is done. Total count we have got as 16. Okay, first processing for transaction number 1 started the process. Okay, so the Word document is created. Okay, it is reading the Word document from there, and now it would be replacing all the things one by one, right? So if I just click on here, okay, so you can see that the things are getting replaced by the robot. Okay, once it is done, okay, it has replaced the picture also. Okay, okay, and now it would have hit the breakpoint. So card created for str employee code, right? So as you can see, the card is created for the str employee code. If I click on step into, it is gone out. So let me go back to the folder. You can see this word is closed. I'll go back to the folder. Yes, there are two files. One is for the PDF. If I just open the PDF, okay, so this looks good. The only thing which I feel is that this time should not come here, right? We should be only the date, right? So this is one thing which we need to take care of. Otherwise, this looks good. Super. Fine. So now we can print this ID card and Brittany can come to the organization. Super. Okay, so now let me quickly validate whether it has done any changes to my ID form or not, right? So okay, so if you notice here what has happened, it has updated my template as well, right, which was the ID form. Now if I re-trigger it, the next transaction would not get the underscore name, right? So how do I fix it? Okay, so now to fix this, I will come to Word Application Scope, and Word Application Scope has a property which is called autosave, which means that once all the activities in the Word Application Scope are completed, which means all of these are completed, it is going to save the Word document. So I do not want to do that because I have already done a save as here, right, as a PDF as well as doc, right? So to fix that issue, I'll go to this one in the properties and I will just remove the autosave, right? By default it was check, I just uncheck it and then hit a quick save. The other thing was which I could notice what in the final ID cards, what was happening, that there was this time also which was coming, right? So we just want the date, we don't want the time. So let's fix that as well. So in the Word Application Scope, wherever we are replacing the date of joining, we are telling it to replace the date of joining here, right? But date of joining is coming as date time from here, right? So what I can do is two ways to do it now. What you can do is you can convert this to date time and this, or otherwise you can just replace this thing. So I'll go here in the where I am passing the date of joining, replace it with date of joining dot, I would just say this is a string, right? So I would just replace what is the old value, this is the old value, and replace it with nothing. That's it. That is done. I'll go back here, delete both of them. Okay, ID cards, okay, it's already open here. Close this, try again. I have deleted the empty folder and I have kept the correct ID form again, which is a blank ID form, and let's try to trigger it again, and this time Again, I have kept a debugger there. I'll close this. So this time we should get the ID card with only the date, and the template should not be hampered, right? And one more thing, what is happening that whenever the Excel is opening, right? It is opening the Excel, it is popping up the Excel. So we do not want to see the Excel popping up. So in the initialization, where we are reading the template, right? In the first run, where we are reading all the records, first run, here in the read input data, what is happening, it is opening the Excel for me, right? Every time I do not want to see the Excel, so in here just toggle the visible option, this one, save this, go back here, and now debug. Okay, so debug has started. Now it should create the ID card only for one record. I have put a breakpoint there. In the background, now the word application scope has been opened, and now the bot would be replacing the items there. Okay, and now my debugger is hit, right? So if I click on step into, it says that the card created for 50886. Now there are two things which I need to validate. First one is the PDF, right? So yes, now I am only getting the date and I'm not getting the timestamp because we have replaced it. This is good. The other thing is my template should be there, right? So my template was ID form, this one, right? So this is the ID form. The ID form has not been impacted, right? So the data is available here and the ID form is still intact because we have just removed the save as. So this looks good, right? Okay, so I can now go and stop this process. Okay, so once the ID card is created, there was one more thing which we need to do, right? If you remember, in the actual file, which the source file, I need to update the status here as well, right? Whether the card is created successfully or not, or if it is having some exception, if exception, then what has the exception, all those details I want to put it in this Excel as well, right? So we have to update the transaction status, right? So how do we do it now? So I hope now you understand this thing. Now this is good, the card is created, it is in the process.xaml, right? If everything goes good in the process.xaml, see what happens in the process.xaml. After this process.xaml is executed, this is the next step which gets executed for set transaction status of the success one, right? So this is one way which is responsible for setting the transaction status for all the successful items, right? And if you see in the bottom, this one, it has the same for setting the transaction status of business rule exception, and in here you have setting the transaction status for the uh, system exception as well, right? So if you will see, the XAML which get invoked every time is the set transaction status, right, which is responsible for setting the transaction status. Same happens for the success as well, right? So that means we need to write our code in here. So I'll go to set transaction status. Now what do I want to do? I want to update the status back in the Excel, right? So it's absolutely simple. In case of success, if the transaction is successful, so previously it used to update the status in the, see, set transaction status was setting in the queue, but I do not have the queue now, right? So what do I want to do? I want to update the status in the Excel itself. Now to update the status, I would have to write something here, right? So to write something in this cell, it is a cell, right? It is H1, H2, H3, H4, H5. So this is a cell. I need to use an activity which is called write cell. Now if you want to know how exactly write cell work, there is a dedicated video I have put in the description. You can refer that how exactly the write cell works. Okay. So now if the transaction item is a queue status, this block will execute, but in our case it is not there, so it won't execute. So in here, I will just use a single activity which is called write cell. Now write cell will ask me, you tell me the Mukesh where exactly I should write it, right? So now there are two write cell, one is for the Excel and one is for the workbook. I can take the workbook because I don't want to use Excel application scope. I hope you understand the difference between Excel and workbook. Again, workbook will ask me, tell me the path of the Excel, right? Again, where is the path of the Excel? The path of the Excel, I need to get it from the config file, okay? Because we don't hard code anything. So I'll just open the config. Okay, so this is the Excel path. So I will use this variable which is called the path Excel. go back here in my UiPath. Where do I want to write the cell? I want to write it in this one, in this guy, path excel dot to string, right? So this is the Excel path where we need to update. Now where do you want to update? Which is the sheet name. So the sheet name is also in the config, which is called the sheet name. Copy this, come back here. Instead of the sheet name, you have to pass here the same way we pass the sheet name. I will pass this like this, dot to string. So I'm telling UiPath, you go to this Excel, into this sheet, and you need to write something. Now what is that something? In case of successful, I want to write a successful generated, right? So let's say I just write successful. You can write anything, right? You can write ID card generated successful, or you can just write successful. So I'm just writing successful. Fine. Now how it will know that where I have to write? It is always going to write in A1, right? So it will always come and write in here. I don't want to write it here. I want to write in this one. Let's say, let's decide a column. In the column H, right? I want to write it here. So what is this? H2. Fine. So first time, this one, this cell would be A1, right? So let me go here and open it like this. Fine. So how would we evaluate the cell? First of all, I need to write it in H. But now let's say you would say that now, Mukesh, I don't want to write it H, I want to write it in I, J or K. Let's make it configurable. I would say status cell, and I just mention here H, right? So cell where the status would be written, it's on the H, right? Fine. So in the instead of H, now I will use the same concept. From the config, use the variable which is this one. The name of the variable is, sorry, the name of the key is status cell. Copy this, come back here, and this is H. Now after the H, I want to use this number which is 2. So every time when I run this automation, I am getting something from UiPath which is called transaction number. If you remember, I will hit OK as of now. I'll quickly show it to you why this logic. If you remember, in the get transaction data, if you go to the variables, right? So the transaction number is starting from 1. That means for this one the number is 1. For this one the number is 2. For this one the number is 3. So for this one the transaction number is 1, right? And I want to write the value in H2, right? So I want to write the value in H2. So in my code I would need to write H, then I would need to write the transaction number, right? And then I would need to add 1 to the transaction number, right? Because the transaction number is 1 for this one, right? So how do I make it H2? To make it H2, I would need to write H followed by the transaction number and increment it by 1. Why incrementing it 1? Because this is in H2. If I do not increment, it will write the status here, right? So that's what we are going to do here, right? So the transaction number in the set transaction, go to the right cell in the properties. In here, after the status cell is there, I want to write the number 2. So the number 2, let me see if I have the transaction number here or not. Okay, so I'll hit OK. Let's see in the set transaction status, do I have the transaction number? Yes, it is there. In transaction item is there. Okay, in transaction number, IO transaction number is there. Okay, fine. So that is the same thing. I go to properties. In the cell number, I would just write IO transaction number plus 1, right? Why plus 1? Because it is starting from 1 and I want to write it on the second cell, dot to string. Now what would happen? The status cell, it will take it from the config which is H, 1 plus 1 equal to 2. Next time 2 plus 1 equal to 3. That's it. Now what do I want to write? I want to write successful. So this is for right cell of success. Same thing, I'll copy this, save this, I'll go and copy this one, and now I'll come down to the set transaction status of successful is done. Let's come to the business exception. In case of business exception, if this is a queue item, no, so nothing goes here. I will put the right cell here, and instead of successful, now I would write here business exception, right? That's it. Now the same thing. Okay, let me do a control plus Z. Yeah, business exception, copy this, go back to the system exception, and in the system exception here I can actually go and write here system exception. Okay, so let me check. So this is the in business exception. Okay, so all the exception detail in the business exception is coming in this variable which is called the business exception. So what I can do actually is, you can use this object here. After the business exception, I want to print what is the message, right? So I just type here in business exception dot message, I guess. Okay, dot message, yes. So this will actually give me that what is the actual message of business exception, right? So that we can also use. The same I can do it for the set transaction status of the system exception as well. In here, if you notice in the arguments, we are getting the system exception as well, right? Which is an in system exception. So for the system exception, I would just write here plus in of system exception, right? In case I get a system exception, I just want to know that what exactly is the exception, right? So what is the variable dot toString. For the system exception, I want to write the complete detail. Again, you can always customize this what all detail you require, but for me this thing works fine. So now what happens in case of system exception? It will, in case of success, it will write success. In case of business exception, it will write business exception along with the message. In case of system exception, we are writing the entire thing. And how we are writing? We are using a write cell activity. Fine. So this thing is also done. It will use this H column, and this H again we have configured it here. So I go here and save this. Fine. This looks good. Okay. So now once the status has been written, what is the next thing? The next thing we have to do is we have to send an email also. So for example, let's say we have to send the email, and we have to send the email to the admin, right? So I just specify here admin mail ID. Okay. So for me, so this is the admin mail ID, and this is the mail ID which you have to email me for the code and the files, right? In case you are following along and you are getting stuck and you want this code, everything, just email me over here, right? So this is my email ID, mail mukeshkala@gmail.com. Always make sure you remove the hyperlinks, right? And then save this. So this is the admin mail ID. So once the ID card is generated, I want to send ID card to the admin, and then admin can decide, right, how do I forward. So in the process transaction, once this thing is generated, which is the ID, which is getting generated somewhere here, right? So once the document is saved as a PDF, it is available here. At this point, I want to send an email. Now to send the email, I have multiple options. If you have already got the Outlook installed, you can use the Outlook, but before that, I do not have the mail dependencies available here, right? So I'll just quickly add, go to the manage, and in the all packages, I would write mail. Okay, and we have to use UiPath.mail.activities. Click on install and save. Now what would happen? This would actually give me all the dependencies which are required to send an email, right? Similarly, sending, you can receive the emails also. We'll just wait for the dependencies to load. Now To send the email, we have multiple options. So I would just type here mail, and you could see that I have couple of options. So in case you already have the Outlook installed on your machine, you can use the send Outlook mail message activity, which is this one, right? In case you do not have the Outlook and you want to send it via Gmail, so for that you would have to use something which is called send SMTP, which is this guy, send SMTP mail message. And once my ID card is created, I need to send an email here. Now, whom do I want to send an email? I want to send the email to this person. The person mail ID is available in the config file. In which key? I just specify the key here. The key is admin mail ID, this one. Go here, dot to string. Fine. Now what should be the subject? The subject should be ID created for, so this again you can customize. I'll leave that with you to customize this header, and you can put this actually in the config file as well. Okay, and I want to specify here employee ID, so that the admin actually looking at the subject knows that okay, so ID created for this employee code. Now what do I want to attach? I want to attach the PDF file. So where is the PDF file? Just copy this part of the PDF, Control A, Control C, right, and pass this in the attach file here like this. Okay, so what would happen? It will actually go and attach the same PDF whichever you have created here. Fine. Now in the body, what do you want to mention? So I just want to mention that sharing the ID card for the employee, or it can be an ID card, it can be a gate pass, anything, right? You can just tweak the use case as per your requirement. Fine. Now to send an email using the send SMTP, basically we require something which is the port, server, email ID and the password. So how would UiPath know that from whose email ID I need to send the email, right? So I need to provide the sender information. So the sender information you need to provide in the form of server, port, email ID and the secure password. Now this secure password has not to be your Gmail password. You can always generate an app password, port and the server, right? So if you go to my channel, there is a dedicated video which is called UiPath send email and configure SMTP, right? This video has all the details in 6 or 7 minutes. You should be able to get all of these details. I have put the links to this video in the description. So what would happen once you use this video, you should be able to get all these details, right? So for me, I have already those details, so I'll just copy paste those details here because that is my app password and my Gmail. I'll quickly update those things here. Okay, so now once you have updated your details as per your Gmail ID, your password, the next thing is we want to run the process. Okay, so now what would happen when the robot is running? It should also send the email also. Okay, so I'll save everything, close this one. Before running the automation, let us quickly validate if all the things are in place or not. So I have this data file which is available in the folder. In the data file, I have all the records of the employee for whom we need to generate the identity cards. Okay, for all these employee, I have the images which are available in this folder like this. I have this ID form which is available, so this will act as a template to create the employee IDs. Okay, to create the visitor pass, the employee ID or anything you can say. Once this is generated, we want to put the final ID cards here in this folder, and also we want to email them to the admin of the company, right? So I'll go here, let me close my mailbox, go here and run the file. Okay, we'll just wait for the robot to fire up. Let us see how it goes. Okay, so as you can see, the robot has started and I can see the green button at the bottom. In my UiPath, I can see that it is processing transaction number 1. I'll keep the Word file open so that we can see actually what is happening. So as you can see, the robot has picked up the first item from the queue. It is creating the identity card. It has replaced the photo as well. And now it will create a PDF. Once everything is done, it will do the same thing for the next one, right? So we'll just wait for the next one. Okay, so now it has got the next employee. As you can see, the robot is filling the identity card templates along with the photographs, right? So we have intentionally put some of the business exception, which means that I have intentionally put some of the details which are wrong. So for wherever the details are not matching and details are incorrect, the robot should actually go and generate a business exception, right? So this is working. If I go back in the UiPath here, right, in the output, you can see that what all things is happening, right? So as of now, the robot is processing transaction number 4. The robot has successfully able to generate the 4 identity cards, right? So we have total of 16. Out of those 16, we have got some of the business exception, some we have got system exception, right? So let's see how does the robot take care of them, right? So as of now, 4 are already created. Now we'll just wait for robot to complete the execution. Transaction number 5 is also completed, so that means 5 ID cards should now have been generated, and we are expecting all these ID cards to be saved in the PDF format, that is a printable format, as well as in an editable format, and we are also expecting the robot to send this email as an attachment to the admin, right? Okay, so now it is processing transaction number 6. So business exception can come in many ways, right? So for example, what happens if the robot is looking for the image in the folder and the image is not available, right? You are generating an ID card and the employee ID is not there. So there is no point in generating, right? You can have a business exception where it is actually trying to go and create and the date of joining is not available, right? So as you can see here, for transaction number 7, I have got an exception which says date of joining cannot be blank. Okay, but now you just think, if this automation is running in an unattended mode, right, and all of these logs would be available in the orchestrator, how would the admin know that which all files are generated and which all are not generated? So for that, if you remember, we have also written this status back to the Excel. That means at the end of this automation, when everything is done, we should be able to get a clear cut status that what has happened to which transaction and why it has failed, right? So as of now, it is processing transaction number 10. So we have kept 16. So let me quickly click on this word and we can see that yes, it is perfectly generating the identity cards wherever the details are valid. Okay, so this automation can be used to generate the gate passes. This automation can be used to generate the visitor passes, employee identity cards, or anything, right? Okay, so let me go back to my UiPath and I can see that yes, 11 are already generated. We just need to wait for 5 more and let us see how it behaves, right? So, and then we'll also validate the email as well. Okay. For the last couple of them, we have got exception because I have intentionally put some data blank there. So let us see if this is behaving correctly or not. This is the last transaction which the robot is processing, and I hope this one is valid. So the robot will generate identity card only and only if it is a valid transaction. Okay, and within 4 minutes all the transactions are successful, and there is this one. Okay, let us go back to the folder and validate sign. So the first thing is, let me go and click on the data folder. So in the data folder, we have kept this as an input, right? And now you can see the robot has added a column in front of it, which says that these many were successful. For this, it was not able to create because the date of joining was blank, which is correct. For this, the image was not available in the folder, right? So for this Clara Smith, which is a human resource, 95185, if I just copy this, go back to the image folder, you can see that there is no image for 98185, right? So that's why it has given a exception that I was not able to find the image, so I didn't created the ID card for you. Okay, for these two, the employee code was missing. For this one, again, the date of joining was missing. If every detail is correct and the image is also available, then the ID card would have been created. Okay, now let's go back to the folder and validate the ID cards. So this is my final ID card folder, and I'll just format it by the type. As you can see that I have got 11 Word file and 11 PDF. So why 11? Because if you see the successful count, so these are the successful count, right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11, right? So 11 identity cards in the editable format and 11 PDF. So let me quickly open some of them and validate. Okay, so this looks good, right? So Sarah having a purchase, this is her, be positive, and this one we'll quickly validate it with. Okay, Sarah, be positive, 14th March is her joining date. Yes, this looks correct. Absolutely awesome, right? So let us quickly validate one more. So we have this employee whose ID card is generated, right? Sharon, and now they can actually print this one. And in case the admin feels that no, I want to change something, we have this editable thing also available here, right? So in case this is date of joining is wrong, so we can actually go and update it here also, right? So that is for an additional feature we just thought of giving it to the admin, right? So this completes my automation. Let me quickly go back to the email and see what is the status of the email. Okay, so I am on my inbox and you can see that as an admin I have received all of these identity cards, right? Let me click on any one of them and you can see that identity card robot has sent me this one which is sharing the identity card and gate pass for the employee, right? So if I just open it, I can see it here, right? So this one is for 66089 and this is the employee card, right? Now what else can be done here? Instead of sending it to directly to the admin, right, you can actually have the employee ID specified here, and then in the send SMTP mail message you just have to pass the employee ID directly from the data row variable, right? I think you can do it. That's an absolutely simple code if you are able to follow along here, right? So that means in case you want to send it, do not want it to send it to the admin and send it to the employee itself, all you have to do is in the send email, instead of taking this config email ID from here, you have to take it from the data row the way we are taking this one, right? Blood group, strbg and all those things, you have to take the input from here, input data, and pass the email ID here, so it will directly go to the employee. So we were successfully able to create a workflow which was successfully able to generate the identity cards for all the employees. It was able to mail the employees. It was able to create the identity cards in editable format, in the printable format, and it has sent the email also to the admin or to the employee, right? Now I hope you enjoyed this one and you were able to follow along with me. Okay, so I would like to wrap this video here. I hope you found this video insightful. If that is the case, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.